First up in the skies is Stephen Barrett, the brilliant lawyer and writer. How are you doing, Stephen?
I'm doing very well. I'm enjoying half term with my child. I think I'm quite public as a single dad, and it's a joy. It's a pleasure.
Well, that's really that's beautiful and very nice to hear. It's always nice when you hear men talking so warmly and affectionately about their children and doing good fathering. So well done to you. Talking about good fathering, I always try and do a segue. Nigel Farage has been laying a little brood of shadow cabinet, as he calls them. I mean, they're not the official opposition, so they don't get to go around and shadow the government. But it sort of moved reform on from being Nigel Farage with some MPs, and then Nigel Farage with MPs and notable faces who defected, and then Nigel Farage with MPs and notable faces who defected who are starting to talk a bit more about policy. So here we go. We've now got people in positions who are going to have portfolios. What did you make of the press conference today, Stephen?
I thought that the most telling moment was when Nigel said that he wasn't going to be around forever. Because historically, there are two gentlemen I deeply respect, and that's the Roman Republican leader called Sulla, who people probably won't remember, and the first American president, George Washington. Both of them could have been dictators for life. They could have been absolute monsters and tyrants, and both of them decided to retire. And it looks to me that Nigel is never going to be a dictator for life. I think we should, I'm a member of Reform, so I have a political interest in his success, and I look forward to his success. But he's clearly not going to be a dictator forever. He's clearly looking to the next generation. He's clearly looking to create something far bigger than a one-man band, and that is what the country needs, if we're absolutely honest. So personally, for me, I loved that bit. It was the bit that Nigel could, because he is such a huge personality on his own. He has achieved so much as one man. He has every right to that respect. But to turn away from that, as Sulla and as George Washington did, and say, no, I'm going to retire, I'm going to live amongst my fellow men as equals, is a hugely important thing to me, and that's what I took from Nigel today.
I get the impression as well, I mean, he said it himself, this is about Reform taking politics seriously, saying we are going to potentially form the next government, so you need to be cognizant of what that is going to look like. We are going to put in place political experience. We're going to give people big jobs, and now you're going to start hearing a bit more about our policies, and people are going to have to command their particular portfolio in the same way that they would have to command a department if they become a minister. Perhaps interestingly, out of the big offices of state, we've had Home Secretary announced, Zia Youssef, who isn't elected, who is very new to politics. So I want to ask your opinion on that particular appointment. Robert Jenrick as Chancellor, when we're sort of more familiar with Robert Jenrick talking about immigration. Suella Braverman in education, when perhaps we're more familiar with her also talking about immigration, and of course having been Home Secretary. And then Richard Tice doing business and energy, which it's like, well, is that your consolation prize because you're not Chancellor? I don't know. But no mention of a Foreign Secretary. So where do you want to begin with that particular smorgasbord? Shall we talk first of all about Zia Youssef as Shadow Home Secretary? What's your take?
I think that's interesting, but the Constitution is really quite a flexible thing. There have been people today who have been trying to attack Reform because they're like, you're not the official shadow cabinet, and actually that's to misunderstand our Constitution. Our Constitution is really quite forgiving. It's quite wide. It's quite elastic. It's not brittle. I was talking to my dad about this at the weekend. This is probably, I mean, we both promised each other that we would research what happened when the Labour Party was created in the early 20th century. But this is the first time, certainly in our lifetime, that the official opposition is effectively not the party with the second largest amount of MPs. It isn't. And I think we all need to recognise that. So having people in the cabinet who aren't MPs, I think, is perfectly acceptable. Lords' appointments are clearly acceptable. I mean, we had David Cameron in Foreign Office.
And Lord Hermer, who we're going to be talking about later, of course.
Evil Penfold, of course. But we have a lot of flexibility in our system for a reason, because we ultimately don't want to crash things. We don't want to everything to just grind to a halt and end up in litigation all the the time. We get through. That's what we as the British do. And I think having Zia in position as a non-MP is perfectly constitutionally acceptable. I would also say that I think it's quite wise to not try and fill every role. If you try and fill every role with 8 MPs and somebody no one's heard of, it all starts to look a bit Edstone. Do you remember the Edstone?
Oh, who can forget the Edstone?
Well,
the
for listeners and viewers who don't
of...
remember, it was 8. They couldn't even get 10 pledges. They just sort of tailed off. They got 8 pledges, and it was absolutely pathetic. I mean, the guy who did the Edstone is in government now, which is, as far as I'm concerned, explains the current government. But no, I think it was wise. I think it's interesting. I would know, because I don't consider myself a politician. I don't consider myself politically gifted, and really that's not my job. My job should be just to explain law to people. I actually think it's a bit unfortunate that I have to declare where my personal politics lie, and I would forgive anybody who disagrees with me instantly. But Nigel Farage is a wily old fox, and anybody who thinks that they're better at politics than Nigel is a loon.
Let's talk about some of the criticism that has been levelled against reform. There are those, I mean, I've been bombarded by a lot of people today, but there are those who say, listen, Zia Youssef was the man who called the cops on Rupert Lowe when there was the fallout of whatever happened behind the scenes in reform. And the cops turned around, you know, after raiding his house at whatever early hour of the morning it was and going through his gun collection, turning around going, well, look, nothing's been substantiated about, you know, claims you made that someone said something 3 months ago. And so people are saying, listen, you know, if you've got someone trigger happy calling the old cop shop, which the police have deemed unnecessary, is that the person you then want to be in charge of policing? Because that is what the Home Office entails.
Well, I think we really need to look at questions like that. And I think we do all need to pause and reflect. What I would say as a Christian is that there has to be capacity for forgiveness. So I think if we make mistakes, we can't be utterly brittle. We can't just damn people forever. But I felt as though Nigel, because I actually watched, I don't watch half as much political commentary as people think, but I watched the speech today, probably because of half term. But he came quite close, I think, to admitting that mistake, you know, it was not perfect. It's not been great. What I personally have lived through, Alex, and I may make my own video on this later today or even tomorrow, is I lived through 24 hours of absolute racist hate from this new organisation. Which I can't believe.
You and me both, Mr. Barrett.
It's been unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. Not since I've been piled on by the far left have I experienced this. It's been earth-shatteringly odd, and I don't believe it's truly what Mr. Lowe is about, because we've been Twitter mutuals for years. I think he's a decent man. And Nigel said he's a decent man, but something has gone wrong in our society, and we need to fix it and maybe stop worrying about the perfect and just try and be as good as we can be.
I mean, look, we will discuss this no doubt later on in the show. I've just been in the middle of writing an article about it again for my beloved Substack. And my sort of personal comment on that is, it seems to me the breakaway entities from what was the Brexit Party think that, or have assessed or determined that Nigel Farage is not going far enough or fast enough. And so they're trying to out Farage. Which sort of, you know, might lead some to say, well, where does that end? Where's the ideological headroom, okay? What areas that are so far untouched and uncharted territory in UK politics are they going to career into? And is it sensible? I've sort of equated it to a bit like we're in a big old mess, an unprecedented political mess in the United Kingdom. Everybody knows that nobody asked for mass immigration or mad communism to be imposed upon Britain with irreparable, far-reaching damage. And it feels like the 11th hour. We know that. But my argument would be, when a loved one is being wheeled on a gurney into the emergency operating theatre, you don't want the backroom barber surgeon with a hacksaw. You want the best, most experienced and careful consultant. And I just kind of feel, as an analogy, that might be where we are right now. Let's talk.
Nigel was quite good on that today. He admitted he had no government experience.
Yeah.
For a man who's often accused of being a demagogue, he literally stood there and said, you know, I've never been in government. I don't really know how it works. Yeah. And admitted that he needed Suella and Rob in particular. And that to me was very very, very touching.
It's very, to be honest, it's something that echoes what other European populist leaders who have managed to break through have done themselves. I remember the Finns party doing this in Finland. Geert Wilders in the Netherlands basically said, you know, we've not been in parliament before, so we're going to give some of those high offices of state to those people who know how it works dealing with the civil service and running departments. Fair enough. That's, I suppose, an understandable position to take. At least that is how Farage has outlined it. The big gaping hole, though, if you're going to announce your big offices of state, the one that you would expect to have come out first, or as part of the first wave of such appointments, would be the foreign secretary. We live in extremely febrile geopolitical times when, you know, certainly when I look at the current cabinet, when I look at the previous cabinet, when I look at people who might form a future cabinet on the Labour side of government, the first thing I think of is this person going to be taken seriously, going to one of the big summits? Are they going to be respected on the world stage? Is Vladimir Putin going to look at them as foreign secretary, rub his paws together with glee and salivate at the prospect of running rings around them? Because these are, you know, we've got to get this right when it comes to where we position ourselves on the Middle East. We've got to get this right when it comes to the strategic importance of NATO. We've got to get this right when it comes to maintaining the special relationship. We've got to get this right when it comes down to facing adversaries in Russia. We've got to get this right when it comes to deterring Iran from trying to blow the West up to smithereens. This is not, at the moment, a job for a novice or an enthusiast or a hobbyist. We need somebody with real clout. And the fact that Nigel has not given that position to anybody makes me think that he's looked around and thought, nobody fits that bill.
There's only 8 of them now, and I don't mean to denigrate or be rude to any of the Super 8. That they've all got fantastic talents. That doesn't necessarily mean they fit. You know, this is the Edstone point. You don't just put them in a role just for the sake of having them in a role. I think it's interesting where you stand on what the most important non-appointed job is, because personally, as a lawyer, I am worried, and a constitutionalist, I'm worried about the fact that there's no Lord Chancellor yet. But I hope that Nigel Farage will deal with that via the House of Lords. And I think we probably...
Well, we've got to create the Lord Chancellor first, of course, because that means getting rid of the Supreme Court, doesn't it? And recreating, basically.
Blair failed. He was desperate to destroy it, and he failed. So he couldn't actually destroy the role. So it's still there. But I think we probably want to reform it. We probably want to bring it back.
It is a eunuch of a Lord Chancellor, I'm afraid. It's little Lord Fauntleroy Chancellor. Yes,
it's Richard III and Shakespeare. The Lord Chancellor is a queen in jest. It's just a joke. This is nonsense. It's not currently the powerful position it once was. But I'd like to see that restored. I think everybody in the country wants to see a strong defence secretary. And I think that's a very important move because, you know, to quote Churchill, Britain must arm. And I think we're at this point now. And Churchill was very, very clear. If we had taken rearmament seriously in the early 1930s, it was Churchill's position after the war that we would have avoided the war.
Right.
So if we want to be safe, and there's a Latin maxim, and if only I had gone to expensive private school, I'd probably be able to tell it to you, Alex. But it's the man who wants peace must prepare for war. If you want peace, prepare for war. And we are clearly as far as I'm concerned, we're clearly in that stage. So I'd like to see that. But this is a question of reform evolving.
For the United Kingdom, regardless of which party ends up in government, we need, in my opinion, somebody who understands that geopolitics is the rich seam that runs through every department, quite frankly, where we procure our pharmaceuticals, how we manage trade, how we deal with our own homegrown industries, our energy policy, rather than sabotaging our own ability to be self-reliant on fossil fuels. I think all of these point towards a larger geopolitical picture. And I think we need someone who's extremely well versed in that role, whoever may form the next government. OK, let's...